The sunlight that morning was soft, a gentle, golden mist that slipped through the pale curtains of a small countryside house. It was the first time in weeks that warmth had touched this space again. Inside, the quiet hum of life had begun to return. The scent of rice porridge simmering on the stove mingled with the faint perfume of blooming jasmine drifting in from the window. Tu Diep sat near that window, wrapped in a light blanket, her skin still fragile, pale as porcelain. Yet her eyes, bright, deep, and reflective, had regained their old light. Every small sound outside, the chirping of sparrows, the laughter of children on their way to school, felt like a gift she had once almost lost. James had gone early that morning to take little Nee to school, leaving Diep in the gentle care of his mother, Mrs. Huyen. The older woman moved quietly around the kitchen, her every gesture full of patience and unspoken affection. When she finally brought out a bowl of minced pork porridge, steam curling in the air, she smiled kindly. "Eat this, dear. You need strength," Mrs. Huyen said softly, setting it down before her. Diep returned a faint smile. "Thank you, Auntie. I'll get better soon, I promise." Mrs. Huyen chuckled lightly, brushing a loose strand of hair from Diep's cheek. "You always say that." "But this time, you just rest. Work can wait. James is handling everything." Diep nodded, but her gaze drifted toward the small framed photo on the shelf, the farm she and James had built together, the dream they'd poured their hearts into. Her thoughts circled restlessly. Were the workers doing all right? Was construction on schedule? She hated being weak, confined to this small house while others toiled outside. Then, the low growl of a motorbike broke the stillness. Mrs. Huyen looked up from the stove, frowning slightly. Who could that be? Moments later, a man's voice called from the gate, steady, deep, unmistakable. "Good morning, Auntie. Is Tu Diep home?" Diep froze. She knew that voice. It was John. The same man who had once stood against James in business, whose coldness had nearly destroyed everything they'd built. Now, he was here, at their door, holding a bouquet of pale chrysanthemums, a strange, ambiguous choice, caught somewhere between apology and remembrance. Mrs. Huyen hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "She's inside. But she's still weak, John." "I won't stay long," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see how she's doing, to say thank you." When he stepped inside, the air seemed to tighten. Diep looked up from her chair. Her breath caught. John paused at the doorway, his tall figure framed by the sunlight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence carried the full weight of their shared past, the betrayal, the near disaster, and the long nights of pain James had endured because of him. Finally, John cleared his throat, his voice rougher than usual. "You look better than I expected." "I heard you were very sick." Diep smiled faintly. "I'm recovering, thank you. It's been a difficult time." He nodded, setting the bouquet gently on the table. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "For everything. And thank you for not turning away when things fell apart." Her eyes softened. "People make mistakes, John. What matters is what they do afterward." He gave a thin, tired smile, a shadow of guilt passing over his face. "You're kinder than I deserve." At that moment, the sound of a car door echoed from outside. Footsteps approached, quick, firm, familiar. "James." He entered, his face lit with relief when he saw Diep sitting up. But then his eyes found John. In an instant, the room changed. The warmth drained, replaced by tension sharp enough to cut the air. "John," James said, his tone low and controlled. "What are you doing here?" John turned, meeting his gaze steadily. "I came to see Tu Diep. Nothing more. After everything you did?" James's hands clenched unconsciously. "You think you can just walk in here with flowers and—" "James," Diep interrupted softly, her voice calm but firm. "It's okay. He just came to visit." James's anger faltered when he saw her pale face, her trembling hands resting on the table's edge. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to steady. "You shouldn't be here, John. Not now." John nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll leave." He turned to Diep once more, his voice barely above a whisper. "Take care of yourself, Diep. And thank you." As he walked away, the faint scent of chrysanthemums lingered in the air, delicate, almost mournful. James stood silently by the door, watching John's figure disappear beyond the gate. His thoughts churned between anger and confusion. Was that man's visit truly out of gratitude, or something else entirely? Diep reached out, her small hand resting gently on his. "Don't let it trouble you," she murmured. "Maybe some wounds need a second chance to heal." James looked at her, fragile yet unbreakable, the woman he had sworn to protect, and felt the knot in his chest slowly loosen. But deep inside, a quiet unease remained. This wasn't the end of John's story. It was the beginning of another storm. Whispers before the storm. That night, the wind moved softly through the fields behind their home. The air was thick with the hum of crickets, the rhythm of the countryside returning to its steady pulse. But James sat alone on the porch, sleepless, the image of John's calm eyes haunting him. There had been something too measured in John's tone, something that didn't feel like simple remorse. Inside, Deep had already fallen asleep after her medicine. Mrs. Huyen had retired to her room. The world was quiet except for the faint hiss of rain starting to fall. James pulled out his phone and scrolled through messages from the construction site. Everything appeared fine, on paper. But his instincts, honed by years of business, told him otherwise. Just as he reached for the phone to call his site manager, it buzzed. It was Lynn, the man overseeing the farm project. "Boss," Lynn said, cautious. "There's something you should know. A few hours ago, someone came by the site asking about the new storage building. Said he used to work with you." James's pulse quickened. "What was his name?" "John," Lynn replied. "He said he was a partner. He asked about materials, costs, who's financing the build." "Didn't cause trouble, just curious." James exhaled slowly. So that was it. John hadn't just come to visit Deep. His curiosity had another layer, one that reeked of hidden intent. When James returned to the bedroom, Deep was still asleep, her face serene beneath the soft glow of the lamp. He sat beside her, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. For a moment, all suspicion melted away. "Sleep well, Deep," he whispered. "I'll take care of everything." Attention rekindled. Morning came with golden sunlight spilling through the window. Deep woke to the sound of James's voice, calm, professional, but edged with tension. "Yes. Double-check the financial transfers," he was saying into the phone. "Every purchase. Every name. If there's a leak, I want to know who's behind it." When he turned and saw her watching, his tone softened instantly. "Good morning," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she replied quietly. "But you're worried about something, aren't you?" He hesitated, then sat beside her. "John showed up at the site last night. I don't know what he's planning, but I don't trust him." Deep looked down at her hands. "Maybe he really just wanted to see how we're doing." James let out a small, bitter laugh. "Men like John don't visit for comfort. They visit for control." She reached for his hand, her fingers warm and steady. "Whatever he's trying to do, we'll face it together." "You've protected me enough, James. Let me stand with you this time." He looked at her, really looked, and the tightness in his chest eased. "Together," he whispered. Later that day, James left to inspect the site while Deep stayed home with Mrs. Huyen and little Nee. The sound of the child's laughter filled the small garden, light and innocent. But even as she smiled, Deep couldn't shake a quiet unease, like the rustle of dry leaves before a storm. When James returned that evening, his shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hands smudged with dirt. But it wasn't exhaustion darkening his face, it was anger. He set his bag down and spoke quietly. "You were right," he said. "The workers told me John's been offering them higher pay to leave our project." "He's trying to disrupt the schedule, maybe even steal the team." Deep's heart tightened. But why didn't he say he was sorry? James's voice dropped, heavy with bitterness. Maybe his apology was just another move. Maybe he's not done with us yet. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. James stared out the window, his reflection caught in the glass. "If John thinks he can play this game again," he murmured, "then he's forgotten who he's dealing with." Behind him, Deep whispered softly, almost to herself, "And yet, sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who need saving." He turned toward her, puzzled, but she only smiled faintly, as though she knew something he didn't. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm breaks. By nightfall, the rain came in earnest, a restless symphony tapping against the roof. James stood on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was steady, cold. "John, we need to talk." On the other end, a pause, then a quiet laugh. "I was wondering when you'd call, James." "Still trying to protect everything you built? This isn't about business anymore," James replied. "It's about honesty. Why are you really here?" Inside, Deep had stepped quietly into the hallway. Through the half-open door, she could hear both voices, one calm, one simmering with restrained fury. John's tone dropped low. "You really don't know, do you? Your father, he took my family's land." "Years ago. The land your company was built on. Everything you own stands on what was once mine." James went still. "That's not possible. My father would never." "He would. And he did." John's voice cracked like thunder. "You were too young to remember, but my family lost everything while yours thrived." "You think I wanted revenge?" "No. I wanted justice." Deep's breath caught. The truth hit like a wave. This wasn't about rivalry, it was inheritance. Old pain passed from father to son. James's hand trembled. "You could have come to me. Talked to me." "I tried," John said quietly. "But you were your father's son. And now, you'll learn what it means to lose. The line went dead. Rain swallowed the silence that followed. Deep stepped out onto the porch, tears glistening in her eyes. James, she whispered, what will you do now? He turned toward her, his face pale but resolute. What I should have done from the start, end this. Not with hatred, but with truth. The morning after, when morning came, the rain had passed, leaving a thin silver mist clinging to the trees. Deep stood by the window, watching droplets slide down the glass, her thoughts heavy. The storm outside was over, but the one inside her heart still raged. James entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Neither could I, she said softly. Everything we believed in, it's all connected to something much darker. James nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. My father's mistakes shouldn't define who I am. But now I understand why John couldn't forgive. He lost everything, because of us. Deep turned to him, her voice steady. Then maybe it's time to stop the cycle of hate. You can't change the past, James. But you can choose what comes next. He reached for her hand, his grip warm and certain. You've always seen light in the darkest places, he murmured. Maybe that's why I need you. Then, a knock at the door. When James opened it, John stood there once more. His raincoat still damp, his eyes weary but calm. I didn't come for revenge, John said quietly. I came to end this. Inside, the 3 of them sat together. No accusations, no shouting, just truth. James looked from John to Deep. Our father's war ends here, he said. We start again, with honesty. John nodded, eyes glistening. Then maybe we can all breathe again. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the fields in gold. For the first time in a long while, peace didn't feel like a distant dream, it felt like a beginning. Epilogue. The story of James, Tu Diep, and John reminds us that the weight of the past can quietly poison the peace of the present, unless we choose forgiveness over vengeance. Sometimes, the pain we carry isn't ours alone. It's the echo of generations. But we can stop it. We can decide that the story will end with us. James learned that true strength lies not in pride or power, but in the courage to face the truth. Tu Diep proved that love, when rooted in understanding, can heal even the deepest wounds. And John, through his pain, discovered that justice without forgiveness only breeds more sorrow. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it frees the heart to build a better future. Peace, in the end, is not something we find, it is something we create, together, with honesty, empathy, and love.